You will now be entering Module 3 so that you may obtain credit for this and future modules of the EMS Officer 1 online program. You must complete and submit your online certificates to the course instructor.
You'll now be entering Module 3, Chapter 11, Working in the Community. When discussing the role of demographics in the community relations, we need to look at a variety of factors. Every community is different, and demographics will vary based on several factors, such as our geography and population. Every EMS agency should take an active role in promoting EMS safety education in their community to help in risk reduction. This can cover a variety of programs such as traffic safety, pediatric and geriatric safety, and promote safety for youthful drivers. As part of this program, we are going to review opportunities that agencies can explore to improve EMS-related public education within the community. As with all aspects of EMS within the community, we'll start at the local level. Volunteer rescue agencies are often established by community members after a local disaster or tragic event. Remember that the first volunteer rescue squad in the nation was established in Roanoke, Virginia, following the tragic drowning of a local resident. Since the 1940s, many volunteer rescue squads have had their quarters available for public meetings and assemblies. Many will build their stations to include a large meeting hall, which can be used for fundraising events such as bingo, fish fries, wedding receptions, and other community events. This helps community members to understand the importance and the role of their local EMS agency. EMS agencies and their personnel, whether volunteer or career, continue to be viewed as an important member of the community. Every EMS officer, regardless of rank, plays an important role as a representative of the agency. Members of the community will look to you as the officer for leadership, guidance, and advice. Not only is a working knowledge of the community important for EMS response to emergency incidents, an EMS officer needs to understand the population and demographics. This is invaluable when you're trying to determine the appropriate services and information on safety programs for the community. Population and demographic data for your locality and state is available through a variety of resources, including the U.S. Census Bureau, the U.S. Department of Labor, and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Demographics are used in marketing and business to define a target audience for a product or service. An EMS demographics will help to determine specific groups within the service are in order to properly serve their needs. For example, it would be important to identify neighborhoods with small children to address the needs of pediatric population. Some examples may include pool safety, helmet use, and car seat installations. Likewise, it would be important to identify neighborhoods with an elderly population to address their needs. Examples may include fall prevention and hands-only CPR. The United States of America has been a melting pot of various nationalities and cultural diversity since the founding at Jamestown in 1607. Emergencies do not limit themselves to a particular ethnicity or culture. Therefore, all EMS personnel must meet the needs of the entire community. It may become necessary for the EMS officer to balance the needs for immediate actions to save lives with the potential for violating cultural customs. Involving members of the various cultural groups within the community may help to ensure you are respectful of cultural traits, values, and characteristics. Since its inception, all EMS agencies have followed the tradition of striving to reduce the risk due to injury or illness. This concept became more widespread after the publication of the EMS Agenda for the Future in 1996. The agenda said EMS systems and providers should be continuously engaged in injury and illness prevention programs. The evolving role of EMS as a partner in the overall healthcare system nationally will likely drive an even greater role for EMS in community risk reduction. There are two levels of need to reduce risk in the community. Systemic, dealing with the community risk, such as child safety programs, bike helmet, pool, and Halloween safety. Individual, dealing with individual citizen or family risks such as child abuse and lack of heat. There are two levels of need to reduce risk in the community, systemic and individual. Systemic needs can be addressed through the development of programs to eliminate or reduce risk, such as bicycle helmet safety programs and fall prevention programs. These programs are community-wide and often involve many organizations and agencies. As an EMS officer, you may come across a systemic need that should be addressed. You must report these needs to your supervising officer. The second level of need is at the individual level. This would occur while responding to a patient's home. An EMS officer should always have a good understanding of what the community programs are available. For example, heating assistance programs for those on a fixed income or fall prevention resources for an elderly couple. Your role as an EMS officer is to connect the citizen in need with the community resource. Some examples of various community programs that may be beneficial to the citizens in the community include Safe Kid programs, CERT programs, child car seat installation programs, programs offered by community social services, mental health and substance abuse counseling services. As an EMS officer, you should be prepared to refer a patient or a family member to these resources. Public inquiries can range from questions about services provided by EMS to complaints about an agency policy or an individual's performance. An EMS officer needs to treat all requests in a professional manner. Always gather all information immediately and be sure the information is accurate. If the request is not within your level of authority, you need to submit to the next higher level of responsibility to be resolved. Every agency has different processes, policies, or guidelines to follow when handling a citizen inquiry or complaint. Some agencies may allow the EMS officer to answer citizen inquiries directly, while others may require all inquiries to be forwarded to administration. It is important to understand and follow these policies to avoid the appearance of unfairness. These programs will vary by agency based on their size and complexity. Some agencies have a large staff to handle public education programs, while other departments may assign it on-duty crews. Some agencies adopt national programs, while others may develop a local program to meet the specific needs of their own community. Every EMS officer should understand some of the basic principles of public education programs. Other examples include EMS safety for babysitters, EMS safety for seniors, and bicycle safety helmet programs. The fundamental goal of public EMS education programs is to prevent injury, death, or loss due to injury or illness. EMS officers may be invited to provide a presentation about EMS to civic organizations. These programs are meant to prevent injury, illness, or death due to emergency incidents, or they might be able to provide an overview of how EMS is delivered in the locality and how the public may help. Some presentations are a simple marketing of your service. That is a different form of public education. The following slides list the components of public education. Four objectives of an EMS safety program are to educate patients and citizens on how to change their behavior, provide instruction to patients and citizens on how to perform specific tasks, inform patients and citizens on important EMS safety issues, and to distribute information on timely EMS issues, such as safe driving, no texting and driving, wearing your seatbelts, proper installation of child safety seats, and so forth. A public education presentation is successful when it causes a change of behavior. You should have a specific goal in mind when educating citizens and patients. Many national and regional public education programs have been developed by professional associations and include EMS for Children, Child Safety Seat Education, Cardiovascular Disease Prevention, recognizing the signs and symptoms and rapidly calling 911, the Vial of Life, Medic Alert, Rider Alert Program, the Safe Haven Program. Also, your local EMS council may have public relations handouts and presentations already packaged. RiskWatch was developed by the National Fire Protection Agency, also known as the NFPA, and is a school-based program aimed at the elementary students. It provides children and their families the skills and knowledge needed to create safer homes and communities. The curriculum is divided into several lessons. Citizens Emergency Response Training, abbreviated CERT, is part of a National Citizens Corps initiative. The CERT program helps provide citizens an understanding of how they can help or assist in many disaster-type situations. Groups of CERT-trained citizens can provide assistance to victims and collect and provide disaster intelligence information to the proper authorities. Consult with your local emergency manager for information about your local CERT program. CERT was originally developed by the Los Angeles Fire Department, and the program was adopted and materials expanded by the Emergency Management Institute and the National Fire Academy. The CERT program was moved under the Citizen Corps in 2004. CERT instructors are required to complete a CERT training, including Train the Trainer program, before they can provide instruction. CERT training topics include safety and utility control, disaster medical operations, light search and rescue operations, disaster psychology, and terrorism in CERT. Safe Kids Worldwide is a global organization dedicated to preventing injuries in children, the #1 killer of kids in the United States. When a child dies or seriously injured, the lives of many families, the entire community, is changed forever. But these tragedies don't have to happen. Some regional and locally developed programs include Camp Rescue and EMS Camp for Kids. These programs allow children to participate in and practice EMS procedures in a safe and fun environment. Bicycle and motorcycle rider safety and helmet programs that encourage children and adults to wear a helmet when riding a bicycle or motorcycle. Local programs may be developed by EMS agencies to prevent an unsafe act that has been identified in a local area. For example, Richmond Ambulance Authority developed a crossing alert program to address the increased amount of motor vehicle collisions involving pedestrians being struck. Many agencies have started a hands-only CPR campaign to reduce the amount of deaths from sudden cardiac arrest. This program aims to teach the general public how to perform compressions only until first responders arrive. Every community is different and will have special needs that will affect how the EMS agency will be required to provide services. EMS agencies have direct contact with many members of the community. As an EMS officer, you and your team represent your EMS agency. An important method of preventing injuries, illness, or death is to change the behavior through public education programs. The EMS officer has an important role in answering public inquiries or directing inquiries to the best source for an effective response. The best method of preventing injuries, illness, or death in an emergency is by preventing the emergency from occurring in the first place. The EMS officer has an important role in providing community education programs, which can help change behaviors. There are many examples of regional, state, and national public education programs, and information is already available to use. Or through an effective planning process, the EMS officer can develop and present a locally developed program. You are now entering Module 3, Chapter 12, Handling Problems, Conflicts, and Mistakes. No matter how much you try to do the right thing when providing care to someone, there will be occasions when a problem, conflict, or mistake will occur that will require some type of intervention by the EMS officer. In this unit, we will discuss various successful methods to handle conflict, deal with citizen complaints, and recommend and advise policies. We'll also discuss the implementation of policies as well as describe the difference between customer services and customer satisfaction. Before you resolve a problem or make recommendations for a policy or procedure change, you have to identify the problem. The problem may or may not be obvious. Sometimes the resolution or change is very minor and will not require a lot of work, but oftentimes the resolution to the problem will require a lot of thoughtful consideration. For example, during an emergency extrication, your extrication tool suddenly stops working. In order to complete the extrication, you must troubleshoot and resolve the problem preventing its operation. It may be as simple as needing fuel or requiring more in-depth special problem-solving skills. The problem might also stem from the operator error, lack of preventative maintenance, or a training issue. During a non-emergency situation, such as a disagreement between two members of the agency, it will require a different set of problem-solving skills to address the concerns of each member and help them resolve their differences. When addressing a problem, you will use a variety of decision-making skills which will be guided by a number of factors. These factors include organizational values. These are the values of your organization feels are vital for the success and prosperity of that agency, locality, and its citizens. These values include ethics, morals, honesty, and integrity. Guidelines, policies, and procedures. These are operational guidelines of the agency which sets the standards for the organization to follow. Examples include seatbelt usage, use of cell phone cameras on a call, release as an AIC, or dealing with a citizen complaint, and so forth. A complaint will often result when a patient, family member, or even a bystander has observed an incident which has aggravated them to the point where their grief, anger, or resentment has pushed them to the point where they will file a complaint against the agency member or the agency at large. Failure to address these concerns in a timely manner will result in continued frustration by the complainant and could ultimately become a public relations nightmare for that agency. No one is infallible, and as a result, mistakes will occur. These mistakes can be result from bad judgment, deficient knowledge, or carelessness. When mistakes occur in the station, few people will be involved. But think about those situations when a mistake occurs on a major incident and is witnessed by a number of bystanders or captured on video by the media. Perhaps a crew member's comment about a confidential patient matter is overheard by a citizen or the patient's family. How your agency's leadership responds to the situation can result in a variety of outcomes, from minor to catastrophic. There will always be the possibility that a citizen will file a complaint about a perceived violation of trust by members of the department. This violation of trust may be the result of a simple misunderstanding or a major issue such as refusing to provide care to an ill or injured patient. When this occurs, the EMS officer is required to address the issue as quickly and as proficiently as possible. It will take a lot of tact and diplomacy on the officer's part to resolve these concerns to the complainant's satisfaction. It is always a good idea to have a plan when you sit down to address a problem. Here are your steps for the general decision making. Of course, the first step is to identify your problem. You cannot fix a problem if you don't know what the problem is. Once you understand the problem, then you begin to develop and consider alternative solutions of how to address the problem. Once the best solution has been selected, you need to implement the solution and evaluate the outcome. If you find that your initial solution is not effective, reconsider the issues and alternative solutions and adjust. When you are defining the problem, you must be willing to get, quote, down and dirty, to get all the details, the good, the bad, and the ugly, in order to ensure all details about the event have been uncovered and are available for review. This might include some or all of the following: written statements from everyone involved in the situation, copies of patient care reports, maintenance records, and/or current policies and procedures. During this discussion, the EMS officer must demonstrate that he or she can be trusted to listen to all sides of the argument before rendering a decision. As with most relationships, both on and off the job, it is important to ensure that everyone trusts the EMS officer not to make a hasty decision until everyone has heard about the details of the situation. No one will be willing to open up their feelings during this discussion if they feel the EMS officer will not maintain an unbiased attitude toward everyone involved. It is not an easy task, but the results are very rewarding when everyone feels validated. One of the hardest things people sometimes have trouble doing is to report when something goes wrong to a supervisor. No one likes to be the bearer of bad news. It is for this reason especially that the EMS officer needs to work diligently every day to create a work environment where people feel empowered to make good decisions when faced with adverse situations and to report bad news and failures as soon as they occur. You will learn more on this topic later when we discuss near-miss reporting. One way to determine an alternative solution to a problem is to spend some time brainstorming possible responses to an issue. This is done by including everyone who has some knowledge about the problem. There are no good real ground rules to brainstorming an issue except to give everyone an equal opportunity to offer suggestions on how to deal with problems without being chastised for their ideas. This process may or may not include the senior leadership of the agency depending on the situation. The decision is usually left to the senior leaders of the level of their involvement. Senior leadership may decide not to participate to allow the members feel more comfortable in sharing their ideas. The key factor in a brainstorming process is that participants feel the process is legitimate and their efforts will be validated. When trying to solve a problem, it may help to use brainstorming technique. Using an easel chart, whiteboard, or chalkboard, having a scribe write all the ideas on the board. Give the group a time limit such as 10 to 20 minutes to generate their ideas. Encourage everyone to also list alternative ideas as well. Remember, there are no right or wrong ideas. After your 20-minute time limit, allowing the group to identify the top 5 ideas which they like best. At this point, list the criteria for selecting the best solution to your problem. Now, based on that criteria, have everyone evaluate and rate the top listed solutions. Using the scale of 0 to 5, add up the scores for each idea, and the solution with the highest score should be the best choice for implementation. After defining the problem, the EMS officer will need to select a solution. What is a core value of your agency? If your involvement in your community is a major concern for your agency, then that is a core value. Any solution you select to solve a problem will take that core value into consideration. For more information on the importance of core values, read Stephen Covey's text on the subject. Implementation can be the most challenging aspect of problem solving. Every solution you choose to utilize should have an implementation plan with a deadline. Your solution should also include who will do what and by when. Any solution which does not identify an implementation date will wither and die on the vine, so to speak. While you may not meet the deadline for implementation due to various roadblocks, it is imperative that you set a date and then revise the plan as necessary. After implementation of the solution, the EMS officer must assess whether it produces the desired results. Few solutions will work perfectly the first time, so you may need to make some modifications to your plans or even select another option. You may need to re-engage the original committee to review the process and obtain their thoughts and feedback on the results of the process. Determining whether the solution actually solved the problem requires some type of measurement that compares the original condition with the condition after the implementation. These solutions should always be held one-on-one in a quiet area, such as an office, where they can have some privacy and not be disturbed by as many distractions. As noted earlier in this module, we discussed issues with an EMS officer might need to address or reduce or eliminate a conflict within the organization. One factor that distinguishes an EMS officer from a provider is the responsibility to act as an agent of the formal agency. You are the first level representative of the EMS chief when dealing with subordinates and enforcing policies and procedures. These conflicts might be between coworkers, the work environment, an agency policy or procedure, or even the behavior, actions, or decisions of the EMS officer. Not everyone will like your chosen solution. Be prepared to manage conflict. The conflict resolution model requires the EMS officer to be an active listener while taking detailed notes. This will allow you to gather as much information as possible about the conflict. As the EMS officer, you should make every attempt to actively listen. Active listening is the conscious process of securing all kinds of information through a combination of listening and observing. You must give your full attention. It is very important that the officer provide feedback and paraphrase the discussion to ensure that they have received the information appropriately. Be sure to avoid providing an explanation or an excuse. When you investigate the complaint, no matter what your personal feelings may be, you must always gather all the facts. This includes information from everyone involved. Once the investigation is complete, a final report should be prepared which identifies and clearly explains all of the issues. This will also include complete background information on the issue, as well as provide recommended action plan. Once the investigation is completed, the EMS officer will present the final report to their supervisor, who can take one of 4 possible actions. If the investigation shows no further action is required, then nothing further will occur. If the complaint is supported, the request of the complainant for action should be evaluated. This action might be additional training, a written apology, or if serious enough, even suspension or termination from the agency. As with any issue, no action should be taken until all aspects have been thoroughly evaluated. Once a decision is made about the issue, it is important to let the complainant know about the outcome. This is certainly okay if the situation does not involve a personnel matter. It is important to let the complainant know the issue has been addressed, but not the specific outcome for the member involved. Thank them for their concern in bringing the issue to light. If the issue deals with a policy or procedure, then the complainant should know that their bringing to light an issue is appreciated by the organization so that improvements can be made. If the complaint comes from the general public, it is very important that you be fully involved in the process to address their concerns. You must take notes and be an active listener. Don't be insincere in your remarks to the citizen. They are your customer and they expect good customer service at all times. This service could be a simple courtesy shown to a patient, bedside manner, or the type of care provided at the scene. When addressing a citizen's concern, it is vital the EMS officer is empathetic to the citizen, and if needed, provide a reasonable explanation as to why things occurred the way they did. Historically, if you provide a rationale explanation for the actions procedures taken by the agency's member, the citizen may reconsider and withdraw their complaint. Always refer to and follow your agency's policies and procedures. If it becomes obvious that the citizen will not accept the explanation or resolution by the EMS officer, then the citizen may be referred to a supervisor or senior leadership in the agency. Before a successful conflict resolution can occur, it is very important to remove the emotions from the issue and focus on the facts of the situation. You must listen carefully so that you can fully understand where the complaint is coming from. If you can understand the complainant's concerns, then you can better identify their expectations for resolutions in the situation. EMS officers who are actively involved in field operations will routinely be in position to identify a problem and hopefully implement new policies and procedures to address an issue. Astute EMS officers will be able to work within the system to implement new policies for the agency. Once a problem has been identified and the recommendations for policy change has been evaluated using problem-solving techniques, the next step is to prepare a written proposal to the supervisor, review committee, or agency chief for consideration and implementation. Once a new policy is ready for implementation, it is very important that the EMS officer clearly communicates the new or amended policy to all subordinates and obtain their buy-in and compliance. As with any new policy, it is important for the continuous review to occur to ensure that the policy is successful. Keep in mind that change seldom comes easy. Be prepared for questions and undermine of successful implementation. Refer to and follow your EMS agency's procedures and guidelines before considering implementation of a new procedure. The old saying of "the customer is always right" has a lot of validity for providing EMS service to the community. We are, after all, there for welfare and safety of our respective communities. When addressing community service and satisfaction, we must keep our focus on the facts and fix problems as quickly as possible. Every agency must do everything possible to learn what the public expects from an EMS agency and work diligently to implement those innovations into their operations. You are now entering Module 3, Chapter 5, Safety and Risk Management. When discussing safety and risk management, we need to look at a variety of factors. In this chapter, we'll discuss how to develop an incident action plan. Incident action plans ensure that everyone knows what is going on. We'll describe the initiatives that have been implemented to reduce EMS provider injuries and deaths and list the most common causes of personal injury and deaths to EMS providers. We will describe principles that each agency should practice to prevent emergency incident injuries and what safety considerations should be taken. We'll also look at components of an infectious disease control program. We will describe procedures for conducting and documenting an accident investigation and list the elements of a post-incident analysis or hot wash. There is a separate class that deals specifically with the incident safety officer position. EMS operations often include high-risk situations that can occur under any weather conditions at any time, day or night. The EMS officer is responsible for ensuring that every provider completes every incident without serious injury, disability, or death. In short, it is your responsibility as an officer to ensure that everyone goes home. As an EMS officer, you must identify hazards and dangerous conditions to provide a safe work environment for EMS providers. It is your job to identify and correct unsafe behaviors. Good safety habits should be incorporated into all activities. You must set a good example for others to follow. The EMS officer develops an incident action plan that addresses and minimizes the chance to harm personnel by identifying and controlling the factors that might lead to injury or death. Prevention depends on your ability to avoid the events that might lead to injury or death. Everyone Goes Home is a program developed by the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, the FFFF, to prevent line-of-duty deaths and injuries. The principles and practices used by the Everyone Goes Home initiative are extremely applicable to EMS agencies. EMS providers must work in teams at emergency incidents, and EMS officers must maintain accountability at all times for the locations and functions of all members working under their supervision. Reliable two-way communications must be maintained throughout the chain of command. It is possible all personnel should have a radio. The radio should be treated as a tool that can be used as a lifeline. EMS Volunteer Event Notification Tool, also known as EVENT, is a program of the Center for Leadership, Innovation, and Research in EMS, CLIR, with sponsorship provided by the North Central EMS Institute and the National EMS Management Association, the Paramedic Chiefs of Canada, the National Association of Emergency Medical Technicians, and the National Association of State EMS Officials. EVENT is a tool designed to improve the safety, quality, and consistent delivery of EMS emergency medical services. It collects data submitted anonymously by EMS practitioners. The data collected will be used to develop policies, procedures, and training programs to improve the safety delivery of EMS. A similar system used by airline pilots has led to important airline system improvements based upon pilot-reported near-miss situations and errors. Any individual who encounters or recognizes a situation in which EMS safety event occurred or could have occurred is strongly encouraged to submit a report by completing the appropriate event notification tool. The confidentiality and anonymity of this reporting tool is designed to encourage EMS practitioners to readily report EMS safety events without the fear of repercussions. Fire departments may use web-based systems to report their misses at the www.firefighternearmiss.com. Heart attacks are the leading cause of death for public safety personnel. Risk factors that contribute to these deaths are obesity, high cholesterol, smoking, and family history. Fire and EMS personnel are notorious for poor lifestyle choices, including lack of physical conditioning, all the while holding jobs that are physically strenuous, poor eating habits, and poor sleeping habits. EMS agencies should ensure that their personnel are physically fit and undergo a physical examination. Physical fitness should be considered an essential component of the overall training each agency implements. Lifestyle changes such as quitting smoking, lowering high blood pressure, reducing high blood cholesterol levels, and maintaining a healthy weight, managing diabetes can also reduce the risk of fatal heart attacks. Collisions account for a number of EMS line of duty deaths, LODD, each year. Excessive speed, given road conditions, and operator error are frequently cited causes of fatal collisions. Most importantly, everyone must be seat belted. Yes, this includes those in the patient care compartment. Only personnel who have completed a Virginia Office of EMS approved Emergency Vehicle Operator course, or EVOC, are allowed to operate EMS vehicles. You, as the EMS officer, are responsible for ensuring that the driver consistently follows the rules of the road. Certain exemptions are allowed for emergency response under the Virginia State Code. Remember that when you take advantage of them, you do it with due regard for safety. Motor vehicle accidents account for 20% of emergency responder deaths in the U.S. You can have an impact by insisting that your driver obeys the rules. As an EMS officer, it is your responsibility to ensure the integrity of the crew is kept throughout the operations. You must know the location and function of every provider. When more than one unit is responding to an incident, the officer should have access to a user-friendly accountability system. Accountability systems allow for officers to be able to easily identify personnel who are on scene, given a process to account for personnel quickly, and to ensure personnel do not go unaccounted for an extended period of time. Every EMS officer is expected to maintain continual connection between the functions being performed and the overall situation. This is one of the most important reasons for establishing and maintaining an effective incident command structure, ICS, at every incident. A risk-benefits analysis is based on a hazard and situation assessment that weighs the risk involved in a particular course of action against the benefits to be gained using those risks. Risk a little to save a little, risk a lot to save a lot. The general knowledge requirements of an incident safety officer include safety and health hazards involved, infectious disease reporting, personnel accountability systems, incident scene rehabilitation. As you can see from this list, this person has to be a knowledgeable individual. The person is best filled by a senior member. Typical incident safety officer tasks include ensure hazard areas are established and communicated to members, as well as ensuring that they are adequately marked. As discussed previously, the safety officer must ensure an accountability system is used. When necessary, the safety officer will conduct an investigation after an injury, illness, or exposure has occurred. When a landing zone is required, the safety officer will evaluate hazards and communicate with the helicopter to ensure a safe landing zone has been established. The safety officer works to ensure compliance with the infectious control plan, and in some organizations, the safety officer may also serve as the designated infectious control officer. On incidents that have longer operational periods, the safety officer ensures that effective rehabilitation tents have been established. Rehabilitation is the process of providing rest, rehydration, nourishment, and medical evaluation to members who are involved in a strenuous or extended duration incident scene operations. Incident scene rehabilitation provides for medical evaluation, treatment, monitoring, and fluid and food replenishments, mental rest, and relief from climatic conditions. An EMS officer, you should emphasize the importance of rehabilitation to your personnel. Ensure they know to stop before they drop, cool down when they're hot, warm up when they're cold, and dry off when they're wet. Emphasize the importance of staying hydrated during their shift. Every injury or near miss should be viewed as a potential fatal or disabling situation, and injury prevention should be equally important concern of the EMS officer. Safety programs must address and prevent injuries before they occur. Most agencies have policies that regulate safety practices. The EMS officer needs to understand each of these, follow all procedures, ensure that all subordinates follow them as well. It may be useful to have providers review videos of incidents and then critique them based solely on safety policies. This will emphasize the way that things are supposed to be done and what actually occurs at an emergency incident.
As an EMS officer, you should encourage your personnel to sign a safety pledge, such as the one provided at the link above. The safety pledge encourages personnel to use safe driving habits, use seatbelts and appropriate PPE so that they arrive alive and stay.
Some agencies may require each individual to sign documents acknowledging and understanding of the safety practices. As an EMS officer, you should sit down with each new person and go through it in detail, each of these policies and procedures that are in place. After reviewing the policies and procedure, it is useful to have the personnel participate in a discussion about each policy. Some sources that can be used to seek examples of safety policies include Report of the Week from the National Firefighter Near Miss Program, the Secret List sent by Firefighter Close Calls website, information posted by the Emergency Responder Safety Institute, ERSI, incident videos collected by Statler 911, NIOSH case studies, the National Fallen Firefighter Foundation Near Miss programs, Firefighter Close Calls, and ERSI provide training programs and teaching resources on their websites. EMS providers who are in good physical condition are less prone to injury as well as reduced risk of heart attacks. Strength and flexibility training allow the body to become more resistant to sprains and strains. Personal protective equipment only works if it's properly worn. Personnel should practice donning and doffing PPE. When involved with highway operations, all personnel should be wearing ANSI Type 3 reflective vest. All personnel involved in an extrication need to be wearing the appropriate PPE. Every EMS agency is required to have an infectious control program. The plan should have the following components: policy identifying and limiting exposures, risk management plans, annual training and education, designation infectious control officer, access to the appropriate immunizations, and a plan for handling exposure incidents. The most important first step with an exposure is to wash the exposed area immediately and thoroughly with soap and running water. The infectious control officer should be immediately notified after an exposure incident has occurred. The designated infectious control officer should arrange for the person with an exposure to receive medical guidance and treatment as soon as practical. Document all exposures as soon as possible using your department's standardized reporting forms. At a minimum, the record should include a detailed description of how the exposure occurred, what mode or route of transmission the exposure had, entry point, i.e., open skin, mucous membranes, airborne, etc. What personnel protective equipment was used at the time of the exposure, and all medical follow-up and treatment. The record of an exposure incident will become part of the personnel record. A complete record of the personnel exposure incidents must be available to the person upon request. Accident investigations. The health and safety officer is charged with ensuring that at all times, all injuries, illnesses, exposures, fatalities, or other potentially hazardous conditions and all accidents involving EMS vehicles, apparatus, equipment, or property. An accident investigation should determine the cause and circumstances surrounding the incident, as well as identify corrective actions needed to prevent a future accident. As an EMS officer, you may be responsible for conducting an initial investigation on a major accident and full investigations on minor incidents. An investigation consists of 3 phases: identification and collection of evidence, interviews with witnesses, written documentation. Each of these steps is essential for development of a comprehensive report that can be used to initiate safer work practices and conditions. In a post-incident analysis, the incident safety officer provides a written report for the agency that includes pertinent information relating to safety and health issues involved in the incident. This would include information about the use of PPE, equipment, accountability systems, rehabilitation operations, and other issues directly affecting the safety and welfare of personnel at the incident scene. EMS Agency Building Safety. PPE can become contaminated at an incident scene and should never be worn into the living quarters. Just as important is ensuring that the driver of the ambulance removes his PPE before leaving the patient care compartment and stepping into the driver's seat. Uniforms should be washed at the station. This ensures no cross-contamination between the family laundry and the work laundry. Clothing and PPE should be inspected regularly, ensuring that there are no holes or other damage that may reduce the integrity of the PPE or clothing. General housekeeping around the station is important in injury and accident prevention. When floors are wet, a wet sign should be used for warning personnel. All tripping hazards should be removed to allow for a clear walking path. Fire extinguishers should be maintained. Personnel should wash hands regularly and adhere to safe food preparation activities. In stations that do not have an exhaust system, officers should ensure that the vehicles are not left running. Back injuries can occur while lifting and moving patients or when carrying out miscellaneous tasks in the station. No matter what the cause, back injuries are serious and potentially career-ending. Proper lifting techniques should be used to reduce the risk of back injuries with an emphasis on bending at the knees and lifting with your legs and not your back. When additional help is needed, it should be asked for. In summary, the EMS officer is responsible for ensuring every provider completes every incident without serious injury and that everyone goes home. The EMS officer must develop an incident action plan that addresses and minimizes the chances of harm by identifying and controlling hazards. Vehicle collisions account for the second largest percentage of traumatic deaths in EMS.